A young girl says, "I know you. Your picture is in my dad's wallet," leaving the millionaire instantly shocked. John Williams woke up with the first ray of sun filtering through the silk curtains of his bedroom. Like every Sunday, he prepared for his morning ritual, a jog through the tree-lined streets of the exclusive neighborhood of Kensington Park. At 45, John was the living image of success, owner of one of the country's most important tech companies, his fortune counted in millions. However, while lacing up his state-of-the-art running shoes, John felt an emptiness that all his money couldn't fill. His mansion, with its 20 suites and Olympic pool, seemed cold and empty, the silence his only constant companion. He stepped outside and began to run, letting the rhythm of his feet drown out the thoughts that plagued him. The streets were almost deserted at this hour on a Sunday morning, with only a few gardeners starting their work in the immaculate gardens of neighboring mansions. John ran without a fixed route, allowing his feet to take him through both familiar and unfamiliar streets. His mind wandered between past memories and present worries. How had he reached this point? He had everything money could buy, yet he felt more alone than ever. He was so absorbed in his thoughts that he almost didn't hear the child's voice calling out, "I know you. Your picture is in my dad's wallet." John stopped abruptly, his heart pounding from both exercise and surprise. He looked around, searching for the source of the voice, and then he saw her, a girl of about 7 years old with brown hair tied in 2 braids and large, expressive eyes looking at him with curiosity. Her clothes were simple, indicating her family didn't enjoy great luxuries. Confused and a bit intrigued, John knelt down to her level. "What's your name, dear?" he asked with a gentle smile. "My name is Emily," she replied, returning the smile. "My dad has a picture of you in his wallet. He showed it to me." A shiver ran down John's spine. Who could this girl's father be, and why would he have a photo of him? His mind started working at full speed, trying to find a logical explanation. "And where is your dad, Emily?" John asked, trying to conceal his growing curiosity. "He's at home. We can go there now if you want," Emily said naturally, taking John's hand with confidence. For a moment, John hesitated. It was Sunday morning, and surely Emily's father would be resting. Besides, would it be wise to follow an unknown girl? But curiosity got the better of caution. He nodded and allowed Emily to guide him. As they walked, John noticed how the landscape gradually changed. The imposing mansions gave way to more modest houses and then to apartment buildings. Emily walked with determination, occasionally greeting a neighbor passing by. Finally, they arrived at a set of simple but well-kept houses. Emily led him to a worn door and knocked firmly. John held his breath, not knowing what to expect. The door opened slowly, revealing a thin man with a tired look and an unshaven beard. John felt as if the air had been knocked out of his lungs. He immediately recognized those eyes, that jawline, those slumped shoulders. It was impossible, and yet there he was. "Is it you?" John exclaimed, feeling a mixture of surprise, emotion, and a touch of guilt. The man's eyes filled with tears, and he took a hesitant step forward. "Yes, it's me," he said with a choked voice. "It's me, Michael." Emily, observing the tension between the two, asked innocently, "Dad, you know him, don't you? He's the man in the picture." "Yes, Emily," Michael replied, trying to control his emotion. "He's my brother." Emily looked from one to the other, not fully understanding the complexity of the moment. "Emily, why don't you go play while he and I talk?" Michael suggested, trying to keep his voice calm. The girl nodded and ran inside the house. The two brothers stood there, looking at each other as a heavy silence settled between them. It had been almost 10 years since they last saw each other, and time seemed to have carved a chasm between them. "Come in, please," Michael finally said, opening the door wider. John entered the modest house, feeling a wave of memories and emotions threatening to overwhelm him. The unexpected reunion with his brother would mark the beginning of a journey of reconciliation, challenges, and redemption that neither of them could foresee. The living room was small but cozy, with worn but clean furniture. On the walls, John noticed some family photographs, including one where Michael held a newborn Emily. The image gave him a pang of guilt for missing so many important moments in his brother's life. "Please, sit down," Michael said, indicating a sofa. "Would you like something to drink?" "We have coffee." "Coffee would be great, thank you," John replied, sitting down with some discomfort. While Michael headed to the kitchen, John couldn't help but notice how much his brother had changed. He was no longer the carefree, energetic young man he remembered. Now he seemed tired, as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. Michael returned with 2 steaming cups of coffee, sitting across from John. For a moment, neither knew what to say. "So, you have a daughter," John began, breaking the awkward silence. Michael felt a small smile light up his tired face. "Yes, Emily. She's 7 years old and the best thing that ever happened to me." "She looks like you," John commented. "She has your eyes and her mother's temperament," Michael added, his smile fading a bit. "Her mother?" John left the question hanging, fearing the answer. "She left us 3 years ago," Michael replied in a low voice, "a car accident." John felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. His brother had been through so much, and he hadn't even known. "I'm so sorry, Michael. I had no idea." "How could you know?" Michael replied, a touch of bitterness in his voice. "We haven't spoken in years." Silence fell between them again, laden with years of distance and unspoken reproaches. "How have you been?" John asked, aware of how inadequate the question sounded. Michael let out a humorless laugh. "I've had better days, but we manage, Emily and I." John nodded, unsure of what else to say. He looked around the small living room, noting the signs of a modest but dignified life. It was a stark contrast to his own mansion, full of luxuries but devoid of warmth. "And you?" Michael asked. "You've become quite the magnate, from what I hear." John shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Yes, well, the company has been successful." "I'm happy for you," Michael said, and to John's surprise, he sounded sincere. "Michael, John began, not knowing exactly what he wanted to say, ask for forgiveness, offer help, try to explain the years of silence. Just then, Emily returned, showing them a colorful drawing of 3 figures, a man, a girl, and a taller man. "Beautiful, dear." "And who are they?" John asked. "It's us," Emily explained. "You, me, and Dad." John was touched by how easily Emily had accepted the situation. "Emily, dear," Michael began gently, "Uncle John probably has to leave now. He has a very busy life." John felt as if he'd been doused with cold water. It was true, he had a busy life, meetings, calls, important decisions to make. But suddenly, none of that seemed to matter as much as the present moment. "Actually," John said, surprising even himself, "I was wondering if you'd like to go have breakfast. I know a place nearby that makes delicious waffles." Emily jumped with excitement. "Yes, please, Dad, can we go?" Michael looked at his brother, a mixture of surprise and caution in his eyes. "I don't know, John. We don't want to impose." "It's no imposition at all," John insisted. "Please, I'd like to get to know my niece better." There was a moment of tension as Michael considered the offer. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Okay, give us a few minutes to change." While Michael and Emily got ready, John stayed in the living room, looking at the photographs on the wall. He saw his brother at different stages of his life: graduation, wedding, Emily's birth. These were important moments he had missed. Determination grew within him. He couldn't change the past, but maybe, just maybe, he could be part of the future. When Michael and Emily returned, ready to go, John greeted them with a genuine smile. As they left the house, with Emily chattering happily between them, John felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Breakfast would be just the beginning, a first step on a path of reconciliation and rediscovery, a path that would lead the Williams brothers to face their past, heal old wounds, and perhaps build a new future together. The restaurant John had chosen was a small family establishment with wooden tables and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee in the air. Emily looked around with wide eyes, full of wonder, while Michael seemed a bit uncomfortable, aware that this wasn't the kind of place he usually frequented. Sitting at a table by the window, with steaming plates of waffles in front of them, the Williams brothers found themselves in an awkward silence, broken only by Emily's occasional enthusiastic comments about the food. "So, Emily," John began, trying to break the ice, "what do you like to do?" "I love drawing," the girl replied with enthusiasm, "and playing soccer. Dad taught me." John looked at his brother with surprise. "You still play soccer?" Michael shrugged. "Once in a while. It's something Emily and I do together on weekends." "I remember when we used to play together in the backyard," John said, a nostalgic smile on his face. "You were better than me." "I still am," Michael joked, and for a moment, the tension between them seemed to ease. Emily watched them with curiosity. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about Uncle John before?" The girl's innocent question fell like a bomb at the table. Michael visibly tensed while John lowered his gaze to his plate. "It's complicated, dear," Michael replied after a moment. "Sometimes adults make mistakes and drift apart. But now we're here," John intervened, looking at his brother with a mix of guilt and hope, "and I'd like, if your dad agrees, for us to get to know each other better." Michael looked at his brother for a long moment before nodding slowly. "I think we can try." The rest of the breakfast unfolded in a more relaxed atmosphere, with Emily telling stories about school and her friends. John listened attentively, amazed by his niece's energy and joy. When they finished eating, John insisted on paying the bill, despite Michael's protests. As they left the restaurant, they found themselves unsure of how to proceed. "Would you like to take a walk in the park?" John suggested. "There's one nearby." Emily nodded enthusiastically, and Michael, seeing his daughter's excitement, agreed. As they walked along the park paths, with Emily running ahead to explore, John and Michael found themselves walking side by side in a silence laden with unspoken questions. "Michael," John began, gathering the courage to address the elephant in the room, "I know it's been years, and things between us didn't end well, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, especially after what happened to your wife." Michael kept his gaze fixed on the path for a moment before responding. "It wasn't just your fault, John. I made mistakes too. My gambling addiction ruined many things. Even so, I should have been there for you. You're my brother." They stopped at a bench, watching Emily play in a nearby area with other children. "How did you overcome it?" John asked. "The addiction, I mean." Michael sighed deeply. "It wasn't easy. I hit rock bottom several times, but when Mary got pregnant, I knew I had to change for her, for the baby. I joined a support group, sought help, and when Emily was born, I knew I couldn't go back." John nodded, feeling a mix of admiration and remorse. "You did it on your own. I should have been there to support you." "I wasn't completely alone," Michael admitted. "Mary's parents helped me a lot, especially after the accident. Without them, I don't know what would have become of Emily and me." "I'm glad you had that support," John said sincerely. "Michael, I know it's a lot to ask, but do you think we could try to rebuild our relationship? I'd like to be part of your life, of Emily's life, if you'll allow me." Michael was silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on his daughter, who laughed as she swung. "It won't be easy, John. A lot has happened, and we've both changed." "I know," John nodded, "but I'm willing to try, to do whatever it takes." "Why now?" Michael asked, turning to look at his brother. "What changed?" John reflected for a moment before answering honestly. "I'm not sure. Maybe it was seeing Emily, realizing all I've missed, or maybe it's that I finally realized that all the success and money mean nothing if you're alone." Michael nodded slowly, as if understanding perfectly what his brother meant. "I can't promise anything," he said finally, "but we can try, for Emily's sake, if not for our own." John felt a lump in his throat. "Thank you, Michael. I won't let you down this time. At that moment, Emily returned to them, her cheeks flushed with play and excitement. Dad, Uncle John, did you see how high I swung? We saw, dear, Michael smiled, hugging his daughter. You were flying. Uncle John, Emily said, turning to him with bright eyes, will you visit us again? John looked at Michael, seeking his approval. When his brother nodded slightly, he replied, I'd love to, Emily. If your dad thinks it's okay, I'd like to see you both again soon. Yes, Emily exclaimed, jumping with excitement. Can we come to your house next time, Uncle? You have a pool. I've always wanted to swim in a pool. John laughed. Yes, I have a pool, and I'd be delighted for you to use it. As they walked back to Michael's house, John felt that something had changed within him. The emptiness he had felt for so long was beginning to fill with the warmth of a family he had forgotten he had. As they said their goodbyes, John hugged Emily and then, after a moment of hesitation, hugged Michael as well. The embrace was brief and a bit awkward, but it was full of unspoken promises. I'll call you this week, John said. Maybe we can arrange that visit to the pool. Michael nodded. We'd like that. As John walked away, turning occasionally to wave at Emily, who waved back enthusiastically, he felt like he was leaving behind the lonely, empty man he had been that morning. The path to reconciliation and redemption would be long and probably difficult, but for the first time in years, John Williams felt hopeful. Back at his mansion, John found himself looking at the empty rooms with new eyes. He no longer saw symbols of his success but spaces that could be filled with laughter and family memories. He went to his office and pulled out an old photo album he had kept at the bottom of a drawer. The images of his childhood with Michael transported him to a simpler time when they were inseparable. He remembered the summers playing in their parents' garden, the silly fights that always ended in laughter, and the promises to always be there for each other. At what point had they lost that? When had money and success become more important than family? John closed the album with determination. He couldn't change the past, but he could do everything possible to build a better future, a future that included his brother and niece. He picked up his phone and, after a moment of hesitation, dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Mom, it's John. Yes, I'm fine. Listen, I have something to tell you. The following days passed in a whirlwind of emotions and preparations for John. After the call to his mother, which resulted in a long and emotional conversation about the past and the future, he dedicated himself to preparing his home for Michael and Emily's visit. On Friday afternoon, John waited nervously at the entrance of his mansion. He had hired a cleaning crew to ensure everything was immaculate and filled the fridge with snacks and drinks he thought Emily would like. When the taxi pulled up in front of the house, John's heart raced. Emily was the first to get out, her eyes widening at the sight of the enormous house. Wow, she exclaimed, it's like a castle. Michael followed, looking a bit uncomfortable in his jeans and casual shirt. John noticed that his brother had made an effort to shave and dress up for the occasion. Welcome, John said, trying to sound casual despite his nerves. I'm glad you could come. Thank you for the invitation, Michael replied, his voice mixing courtesy with a touch of discomfort. Emily, however, didn't notice the tension between the adults. Uncle John, where's the pool? Can we swim now? John laughed, grateful for his niece's enthusiasm. Of course, Emily, but first, how about I show you around the house? As they toured the rooms, John noticed how Michael looked around with a mix of awe and something that seemed like sadness. Emily, on the other hand, was fascinated by everything, especially the home theater and the huge kitchen. I've never seen a house this big, Michael commented in a low voice when they reached John's office. Sometimes it's too big, John admitted, especially when you're alone. There was a moment of awkward silence before Emily saved it once again with her enthusiasm. The pool, Uncle John, can we go now? Sure, John smiled. Why don't you go change? I'll show you where the changing rooms are. While Michael and Emily changed, John took the opportunity to make a quick call to his assistant, canceling a meeting he had scheduled for that afternoon. For the first time in years, work could wait. When he went out to the pool area, he was met with a scene that filled his heart with unexpected warmth. Emily was in the water, laughing and splashing, while Michael watched from the edge, a genuine smile on his face. "Come on, Uncle John," Emily called, "the water's perfect." Without thinking twice, John took off his shirt and dived into the pool, joining his niece in her play. Soon, even Michael was encouraged to enter, and for a moment, it was as if the years of separation had never existed. They played and swam until the sun began to set, painting the sky in golden and pink hues. They got out of the water, exhausted but happy, and John offered them soft, fluffy towels. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "I thought we could have a barbecue in the garden." "Yes, please," Emily exclaimed. "Can I help?" "Of course," John smiled. "In fact, I'll need all the help I can get. I'm not the best cook in the world." As they prepared the food together, John realized the best cook in the world. As they prepared the food together, John realized how natural everything felt. Emily chattered happily about school and her friends, Michael added occasional comments, and John found himself enjoying more than he had in years. Sitting around the garden table, with the night sky above them and the aroma of freshly prepared food in the air, John felt that he was finally home. "This is nice," Michael commented in a low voice as he devoured his burger. "Thank you, John." "No need to thank me," John replied. "I've missed this. I've missed family." Michael nodded, a shadow of sadness crossing his face. "Me too." There was a moment of silence, broken only by the sounds of the night and Emily's occasional enthusiastic comment about the food. "Michael," John began, gathering courage, "I know it's early, and we're just rebuilding, but I'd like to be part of your lives, truly. Not just occasional visits but being there for you, for Emily." Michael looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to read the sincerity in his brother's eyes. "Are you sure? Your life is very different from ours, John. I don't want you to feel obligated." "I don't feel obligated," John interrupted. "I feel complete, for the first time in a long time." Emily, who had been listening to the conversation with curiosity, intervened. "Does that mean we'll come more often, Dad? Can I use the pool again?" Michael looked at his daughter and then at his brother, a small smile forming on his lips. "I think so, dear, if your uncle agrees." "More than agree," John nodded, feeling a wave of emotion. "In fact, I was thinking maybe you could stay this weekend. I have plenty of rooms, and we could make more plans together." Emily jumped with excitement at the idea, and Michael, after a moment of hesitation, nodded. "Okay, we'll stay." That night, as John prepared for bed, he heard laughter coming from the room where Michael and Emily were staying. The sound filled the empty corridors of the mansion, bringing life to a space that had been too silent for too long. He realized that, for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. The mansion was no longer just a symbol of his success but a home that was beginning to fill with the love and warmth of family. As he lay down, John made a silent promise: he would do everything possible to keep this, to be the brother and uncle that Michael and Emily deserved. The path to complete reconciliation would be long, but he was willing to walk it, step by step. With the distant sound of his family's laughter lulling him to sleep, John fell asleep with a smile on his face, dreaming of a future full of possibilities. The weekend flew by in a whirlwind of activities and laughter. John, Michael, and Emily visited the local zoo, watched movies in the home theater, and even improvised a small soccer game in the mansion's vast garden. To John's surprise, he found that he enjoyed these simple moments more than any of the luxurious parties or business events he was used to. On Sunday afternoon, as he helped Michael and Emily pack their things, John felt a pang of sadness at the thought of how empty the house would be when they left. "It was a wonderful weekend," Michael said, trying to maintain a tone of casualness. "We should repeat it sometime." "I'd love that," John replied, a smile on his lips. It was surprisingly pleasant. "Thank you, Michael." Emily, who was packing her drawings into a backpack, looked up with a bright look. "Can we come back next weekend, Uncle John?" John laughed softly. I'd love that, Emily. But I think that depends on your dad. They both looked at Michael, who seemed to consider the idea for a moment. Well, we can't come every weekend, he said, but maybe once a month? John's face lit up. That would be perfect. And maybe I can visit you too. I'd like to see where you live, be part of your daily life. Michael seemed surprised by the suggestion but nodded slowly. Sure, that would be nice. As they said their goodbyes at the door, John hugged Emily tightly, and she returned the hug with strength. Thank you, Uncle John. I had so much fun. Then John turned to his brother. There was a moment of hesitation before they both melted into a warmer, less awkward embrace than the previous week. Take care, Michael, John said, and please call me if you need anything, anything at all. Michael nodded, the emotion clear in his eyes. I will. Thank you, brother. As he watched the taxi drive away, John felt a mix of sadness and hope. The house seemed emptier, yes, but also full of new possibilities. In the following weeks, John found himself reorganizing his life in a way he had never considered before. He started delegating more responsibilities at work, ensuring he had weekends free. He even began leaving the office at reasonable hours during the week, something that surprised his employees. One Wednesday afternoon, John found himself driving to Michael's neighborhood. He had called ahead to make sure it was okay to drop by, and now, as he parked in front of the modest house, he felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. Emily was the first to greet him, running towards him with open arms. Uncle John, you came. John lifted her in his arms, laughing. Of course I came. I promised, didn't I? Michael appeared at the door, a tired but genuine smile on his face. Hello, John. Welcome. They entered the house, and John found himself observing everything with new eyes. The living room, although small, was full of photographs and Emily's drawings. The kitchen, though modest, exuded a delicious smell of something cooking. I hope you like feijoada, Michael said, a bit embarrassed. It's nothing fancy. It smells wonderful, John interrupted sincerely. Much better than any fancy restaurant. During dinner, John listened attentively as Emily talked about her day at school and Michael commented on his work. He realized that despite their financial limitations, there was a warmth and love in this house that his mansion had never had. After dinner, while Emily did her homework, John and Michael sat in the small backyard with cups of coffee. Michael, John began, gathering courage, I've been thinking. I'd like to help financially, I mean. Michael visibly tensed. John, it's not necessary. We manage fine. I know, John said quickly. I don't want to offend. It's just that I have more money than I could ever spend in my life, and I'd like to use it for something meaningful, for Emily's education, maybe, or for you to move to a bigger place if you want. Michael was silent for a moment, looking at his coffee cup. I appreciate the offer, John, truly, but I don't want our relationship to be based on money. I made that mistake once with gambling. John nodded, understanding. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply anything. It's just that I want to help, to be part of your lives. And you are. Michael said, looking at his brother. We don't need your money, John, just your presence, your time. That's more valuable than any amount of money. John felt a lump in his throat. Thank you, Michael. That means a lot to me. They sat in silence for a moment, the distant sound of Emily humming as she did her homework filling the air. You know, Michael finally said, there is something you could help with if you really want to. Anything, John replied immediately. The community center in the neighborhood is having problems. They need volunteers and maybe some donations for their after-school programs. I thought maybe, with your contacts. John smiled, feeling a wave of emotion. I'd love to help with that. In fact, why don't we go together tomorrow? We could see exactly what they need. Michael nodded, a smile forming on his lips. That sounds like a great idea. As John prepared to leave that night, he felt that something had changed, not just in his relationship with Michael and Emily but within himself. For the first time in years, he felt he had a purpose beyond making money and closing deals. "I'll be back tomorrow," he promised, hugging Emily and then Michael. "We have a community center to visit." As he drove back to his mansion, John realized that it no longer felt like his home. His home was where his family was, in that small house full of love and laughter, and he was determined to be a part of it, no matter the cost. The future that once seemed lonely and empty was now full of exciting possibilities, and John was eager to see what tomorrow would bring. The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if the sky wanted to celebrate new beginnings. John woke up early, more excited than he had been in years, ready for a day of work, but this wasn't a normal workday. Today, he was going to do something that really mattered. He arrived at Michael's house just as he was saying goodbye to Emily for school. The girl ran to him, hugging his legs before getting on the school bus. "Good morning," Michael greeted, a cup of coffee in hand. "Ready to see the community center?" John nodded with enthusiasm. "More than ready. In fact, I did some research last night. It seems the center has been struggling for years." Michael sighed as they walked towards John's car. "Yes, it's a shame. It used to be the heart of the neighborhood. Now they can barely keep the lights on." The community center turned out to be an old building with character, located in the heart of the neighborhood. The peeling paint and dirty windows spoke of years of neglect, but John could see the potential behind it all. They were greeted by Sarah, the center's director, a middle-aged woman with a warm smile and tired eyes. "Michael, it's good to see you," she greeted before turning to John with curiosity. "Sarah, this is my brother John," Michael introduced. "He's interested in helping the center." Sarah's eyes lit up. "Oh, that would be wonderful. We need all the help we can get." As Sarah showed them around the center, John made mental notes. The roof needed repairs, the electrical installations were outdated, and most of the equipment was worn out or broken. "What programs do you currently offer?" John asked. Sarah sighed. "We used to have many art classes, after-school tutoring, or reading club for seniors, but with budget cuts, we can barely keep the after-school program open." John nodded, his mind already working on possible solutions. "What if we could not only restore these programs but add more? Maybe computer classes, a small community gym?" Sarah and Michael looked at him with a mix of hope and skepticism. "That would be a dream," Sarah said, "but how?" John smiled. "I have some contacts who might be interested in a corporate social responsibility project, and I'm willing to make a substantial personal donation. But more than that, I want to get involved personally, help organize, recruit volunteers." Michael looked at his brother with a new light of respect and pride. "You can count on me, too. I can help with the repairs, and I'm sure many in the neighborhood would be willing to lend a hand." Sarah seemed on the verge of tears. "I don't know what to say. This could change everything." "Then let's get started," John said, extending his hand. The following days and weeks were a whirlwind of activity. John used his contacts to secure donations from local businesses, while Michael organized volunteer teams from the neighborhood to help with the repairs. John was surprised to find that he enjoyed the manual work, painting walls and fixing furniture alongside the neighborhood residents. In the afternoons, he met with Sarah and a team of volunteers to plan the new programs and how to implement them. Emily, excited to help in any way she could, joined them at the center after school. John watched with pride as she organized books in the new library or helped younger children with their tasks. One Saturday, while John and Michael took a break from painting one of the classrooms, Michael looked at his brother with a smile. "You know, I never thought I'd see you like this," he said. "Like what?" John asked, wiping a paint smudge off his cheek. "Happy," Michael replied simply. "Really happy." John paused, reflecting on his brother's words. "You're right," he finally said. "I don't think I was truly happy for years. This feels good. It feels right." Michael nodded, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. "I'm proud of you, John. You've changed a lot. John felt a lump in his throat. Thank you, Michael. I couldn't have done this without you and Emily. You showed me what really matters in life. The brothers shared a moment of silence, the sound of laughter and hard work filling the air around them. Finally, after months of hard work and dedication, the big day of the community center's reopening arrived. The building, once neglected, now shone with fresh paint and clean windows. Colorful banners announced the new programs, and an enthusiastic crowd gathered for the opening ceremony. John, Michael, and Emily stood beside Sarah, all wearing community center t-shirts. As Sarah gave an emotional thank you speech, John looked around, amazed at what they had accomplished together. He saw families reunited, seniors chatting animatedly, children running with excitement. He saw hope in people's eyes, a new energy in the neighborhood. When it was his turn to speak, John approached the microphone with humility. I'm not here as a benefactor or a savior, he began. I'm here as part of this community. This center is a testament to what we can achieve when we work together, when we care for one another. It has taught me more than I could have taught anyone. It showed me the true meaning of wealth, and it has nothing to do with money in the bank. He looked at Michael and Emily, who smiled at him with pride. My family brought me here, and you have become my extended family. Thank you for allowing me to be part of something so special. As the crowd applauded, John felt his heart fill with a joy he had never experienced before. He knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one full of purpose and love. The months following the community center's reopening brought significant changes, not only for the neighborhood but also for John's life. The project's success had awakened in him a passion for community work he never knew he had. One day, while reviewing some reports in his office, John found himself looking out the window, his mind wandering to the community center and the people he had met there. It was then that he made a decision that would change the course of his life. He called his assistant and asked her to schedule a board meeting as soon as possible. When the board met the next day, John surprised everyone with his announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. I've been at the helm of this company for over a decade. We've achieved great success, and I'm proud of what we've built together. However, I believe it's time for a change. The board members exchanged confused glances as John continued. I've decided to step down as CEO. I will remain on the board, of course, but I think it's time for someone with fresh ideas to take over the day-to-day operations. The room erupted in murmurs of surprise and concern. John raised his hand to calm them. Don't worry. I've thought a lot about this, and I have a plan. I propose we promote Carolina as the new CEO. She has demonstrated exceptional vision and strong leadership as COO, and I believe she's more than ready to take the company to the next level. After hours of discussion and planning, the board finally agreed to the transition plan. John left the meeting feeling lighter than he had in years. That night, at the weekly dinner he now regularly shared with Michael and Emily, he shared the news. Are you sure about this? Michael asked, the concern evident in his voice. John nodded, a serene smile on his face. More sure than ever. The company will be in good hands, and I think I've found my true calling. What are you going to do now, Uncle John? Emily asked, her big eyes full of curiosity. Well, little one, John replied, ruffling his niece's hair, I think I'm going to dedicate my time to helping more communities like ours. There are so many neighborhoods that could benefit from community centers like ours. And so began John's new adventure. In the following months, he worked tirelessly to establish a foundation dedicated to revitalizing communities throughout the city. He used his business contacts to secure funds and resources but also made sure to involve local communities in each project. Michael became his right hand in these efforts, bringing his practical experience and deep understanding of community needs. Together, the brothers formed a formidable team, complementing each other's strengths. Emily, for her part, became something of a mascot for the foundation, her contagious enthusiasm and ability to connect with people of all ages making her a natural ambassador for the cause. One day, while supervising the construction of a new center in a neighborhood across town, Michael looked at his brother with a mix of pride and amazement. "You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I think you've found your true calling," he said. John smiled, watching the volunteers work with enthusiasm. "Neither would I have believed it a year ago. It's amazing how life can take unexpected turns." "Speaking of unexpected turns," Michael said with a sly smile, "I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with Sarah lately." John felt his cheeks flush slightly. It was true that he and the community center director had developed a close friendship in recent months. Their shared passion for community work and dedication to making a difference had brought them closer together. "Well, we've worked together on many projects," John replied, trying to sound casual. Michael laughed. "Come on, brother, I know you. There's something more there, isn't there?" John sighed, a shy smile forming on his lips. "Maybe. It's different from any relationship I've had before. Sarah is incredible. Her compassion, her strength, she inspires me every day." "I'm happy for you," Michael said, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. "You deserve to be happy." As the sun set over the city, John reflected on how much his life had changed in such a short time. From a solitary, self-centered executive, he had transformed into a man with a purpose, surrounded by family and friends, and possibly on the brink of a new, meaningful relationship. "You know what," John said, looking at his brother, "I think I'm already happy, happier than I've been in a long time." The brothers shared a smile, the bond between them stronger than ever. Together, they were building not only community centers but also a legacy of hope and positive change. As they walked back home, John realized that his life, once defined by financial success and status, was now full of something much more valuable: purpose, love, and the satisfaction of making a real difference in the lives of others. The future that once seemed lonely and empty was now full of exciting possibilities, and John was eager to see what else the path had in store for him. As the months passed, the relationship between John and Sarah blossomed, growing from a friendship based on mutual respect to a deep and mature love. Their connection strengthened through their joint work at the foundation, sharing both challenges and triumphs. One spring afternoon, while strolling through the park near the first community center they had renovated together, John stopped under a blooming tree. He took Sarah's hands in his and looked into her eyes. "Sarah," he began, his voice full of emotion, "these last few months have been the happiest and most meaningful of my life, and a big part of that is thanks to you." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with affection. "John, you've also brought so much joy into my life. I never thought I'd find someone who shares my passion for helping others the way you do." John took a deep breath. "Sarah, you've taught me so much about love, compassion, and the true meaning of wealth. You've helped me become a better version of myself. Will you do me the honor of marrying me?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears of happiness. "Oh, John, yes, 1,000 times yes." They kissed under the blooming tree, sealing their commitment to love and the promise of a shared future dedicated to making the world a better place. The news of their engagement was met with joy by Michael and Emily. The small family had become even closer over time, and Sarah had become an integral part of their lives. The wedding was an intimate but love-filled celebration that took place in the garden of the community center where it all began. Surrounded by family, friends, and community members whose lives John and Sarah had touched, they vowed eternal love. Emily, radiant in her flower girl dress, scattered flower petals as Michael walked Sarah down the aisle. The ceremony was a testament to the power of love and community, a symbol of how deeply John's life had changed. In the years that followed, John and Sarah continued to expand their work with the foundation. They opened more community centers, implemented education and job training programs, and worked tirelessly to improve the lives of people in underserved communities. Michael became the foundation's director, overseeing the practical implementation of projects. His experience and connection with the community were invaluable to the mission's continued success. Emily, who had grown up seeing the positive impact her family had on the community, decided to follow in her uncle and father's footsteps. She studied social work at university and joined the foundation after graduating, bringing new ideas and fresh energy to the mission. One day, while celebrating the foundation's 10th anniversary, John looked around in amazement. He was surrounded by his family, Sarah, his life companion and partner in every sense, Michael, his brother and best friend, and Emily, now a young woman full of passion and determination. Who would have thought all this would be possible? John reflected aloud. Sarah squeezed his hand affectionately. You made this possible, my love. Your courage to change, your willingness to open your heart, that's what started all of this. Michael nodded in agreement. I remember when you were the cold businessman who only cared about numbers. Look at what you've become now, brother. I'm so proud of you. Emily hugged her uncle. You've taught us all the true meaning of wealth, Uncle John. It's not about the money in the bank but the impact we can have on others' lives. John felt his eyes fill with tears. Thank you, all of you. You've given me more than I could ever express. This family, this purpose, is more than I ever dreamed of having. As they watched the celebration guests, families whose lives had been transformed by their work, dedicated volunteers, community partners, John realized he had found something more valuable than any financial fortune. He had found the true meaning of wealth, the love of family, the purpose of making a difference, and the satisfaction of leaving a positive legacy in the world. And so, John Williams, once a lonely man trapped in a web of responsibilities and solitude, had transformed. Now he was a man surrounded by love, filled with purpose, making the world a better place one community center at a time. His journey had been long and sometimes difficult, but each step had led him to where he was now, at the heart of a family and a community he loved, living a richer and fuller life than he ever imagined possible. 20 years had passed since that fateful Sunday when a little girl changed the course of John Williams' life. Now, at 65, John found himself sitting on the porch of his home, a modest but cozy residence in the same neighborhood where it all began. Sarah, his life companion for the past 2 decades, was by his side, their hands intertwined as they watched the sunset. Time had left its marks on both of them, but their eyes still shone with the same passion and love that had brought them together. What are you thinking about, my love? Sarah asked, noticing John's thoughtful look. He smiled, squeezing her hand gently. About how everything has changed, how lucky I am. At that moment, the sound of children's laughter filled the air. John and Sarah looked towards the garden, where their 7-year-old granddaughter, Sophie, was playing with a group of neighborhood children. Sophie was the daughter of Emily, who now ran the foundation that John and Sarah had established so many years ago. Emily had married Lucas, a teacher she met while working at one of the community centers, and together they were raising Sophie with the same values of compassion and service they had learned from their parents and uncles. Michael, now a gray-haired man but with the same warm smile, came out of the house with a tray of lemonade. Children, he called, come and refresh yourselves. The children ran to him, thanking him between laughs as they took their cups. Sophie approached the porch, her cheeks flushed from play. Grandpa, she said, looking at John with her big, curious eyes, tell me again the story of how you met Aunt Emily. John laughed, lifting his granddaughter and sitting her on his lap. Again? But you've heard it 1,000 times. But I love it, she insisted. Please, Grandpa. John looked at Sarah and Michael, who nodded with knowing smiles. He then began to narrate the story that had changed his life, the story of a little girl who had recognized him on the street and led him back to his family. As he spoke, John couldn't help but marvel at how life had come full circle. Here he was, telling his granddaughter a story that began with another girl her age, a girl who had been the catalyst for all this happiness. And so, little Sophie, John concluded, I learned that true wealth isn't in money or the things we own, but in the people we love and the difference we can make in others' lives. Sophie hugged him tightly. I love you, Grandpa. When I grow up, I want to be like you and Grandma, helping people. John felt his heart swell with pride and emotion. And you will be, my little one. You have a big heart, just like your mother. At that moment, Emily and Lucas arrived, greeting everyone with warm hugs. Emily, now a middle-aged woman with the same bright smile she had as a child, sat next to her uncle. Telling stories again, Uncle John, she asked with a knowing smile. Your daughter's insatiable, John laughed. Reminds me of someone I knew many years ago. Emily took her uncle's hand, her eyes shining with gratitude. I'll never stop thanking you for everything you've done for us, for this community. John shook his head. No, Emily, it's I who should thank you. You and your father showed me the way to a truly rich life. As the family talked and laughed, sharing stories and memories, John couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey his life had been. From a solitary, self-centered man, he had become the patriarch of a loving family and the pillar of a thriving community. The community centers that had begun as a personal redemption project had spread throughout the city, changing countless lives. The foundation, now run by Emily with Lucas's help, continued to grow and adapt to the community's ever-changing needs. They had added financial education programs, mobile health clinics, and green energy initiatives, always seeking new ways to improve people's lives. Michael, although officially retired, remained a constant presence at the centers, his wisdom and experience always valued. He and John had forged an unbreakable bond over the years, their brotherhood stronger than ever. Sarah, his rock and companion, had been instrumental every step of the way. Her love and support had been John's anchor during difficult times and his joy in the good moments. As the sun set, painting the sky in golden and pink hues, John looked around with a deep sense of peace and gratitude. His life, once empty and meaningless, was now full of love, purpose, and the satisfaction of having made a real difference in the world. Is everything okay, love? Sarah asked, noticing John's distant gaze. He smiled, his eyes shining with tears of happiness. More than okay, my love. I'm at peace, complete. At that moment, as if the universe wanted to underline his words, a gentle breeze blew through the garden, carrying the scent of flowers and the sound of children's laughter. John closed his eyes, absorbing the moment. He thought about the man he had been, the long path he had traveled, and all the lives they had touched in the process. He thought about little Emily, whose innocent question had triggered all of this, and about Sophie, who was now carrying forward this legacy of love and service. And he knew with absolute certainty that this was the true meaning of wealth. It wasn't the millions in his bank account, nor the titles or power he once wielded. The true wealth was here, in this moment, in the love of his family, in the gratitude of his community, and in the satisfaction of a life well lived. John Williams, once a solitary millionaire, had found a treasure far more valuable than any material fortune. He had found love, purpose, and the joy of giving, and in the process, he had discovered the true wealth of the soul. As night fell gently over the neighborhood, the Williams family remained united on the porch, sharing stories, laughter, and love. And John, surrounded by the warmth of his family and the legacy of his work, knew he had lived a truly rich life. This was his happy ending, but also a new beginning, for the love and compassion they had sown would continue to flourish, touching lives and changing the world long after they were gone. And so, the story of John Williams, the millionaire who discovered true wealth, came to an end, but his legacy, the impact of his transformation, and the love he had shared would continue to live on in the hearts of all those whose lives he had touched.